Smart as a deer and fast as a cantaloupe, our brave hero was searching for the lost city of Marcita Aurora. Following the Duncan Road, his trip brought him to the town of Hutton, where people possess the science of the ground, essential to find his goal.
Hello everyone and welcome to Waystone Painting Minis. Happy to see you again while we continue this journey through terrain making. In our first video we engaged the topic of process mapping to prepare our scenery creation and have all the cards in hand to achieve our project. Now it's time to get our hands in the dirt, and I mean it literally. We are designing the ground part of the terrain, cut relief in the foam, hotwire a canal and make dirt, cobblestones and bridges. So grab your XPS foam, your modeling plaster and your patience, because we're going to need those a lot. We'll only use our base foam board for this part, so let's put the background aside. Our main piece of work will be this 4 cm thick XPS foam that I already cut at the 60 by 35 measures of the base, and will report the markers from the base to it. It's mainly the canal now, and we're gonna use a hot wire to cut this into 2 riverbanks. Advice regarding hot wire now: use a mask and a well-ventilated room when using it, as the plastic smoke from the foam is extremely toxic. There, we have our 2 sides and the piece that we have cut in between. Of course, don't throw it away, it will have a huge role to do in this episode. Next, we are going to begin texturing the walls of the canal. This canal will be inspired by my birthplace Namus riverbanks, as well as Bruges medieval canals. It will have stone walls going deep underwater. We take each part of the foam piece and begin drawing lines horizontally, about 1 cm thick, running through the whole riverside. Don't worry if you are not super precise on the curved parts, we just need the main lines to be done. When it's good, we are going to trace the vertical lines. On this part we will alternate bigger and smaller gaps between them to avoid something too even, and try to never draw 2 vertical lines at the same place 2 stages in a row. It's not important if the pen is working at all, we just use the round tip to sculpt the foam. If we want to, we can also damage some stones and give it a different shape. Every imperfection will bring this piece closer to perfection. This is still way too clean for our purpose, so the next step will be to take a ball of tin foil and roll it all over the stone. It will randomly create recesses and cracks in the texture. This will help define the wall a lot when we'll shade and dry brush it later. On the town side of the canal, I've decided to add a sewer exit. So I begin by drawing the general form, then cut the shape with my X-Acto knife 1 cm around my drawing, and then carve into the foam enough to create a hole about 3 cm deep. We don't need to make a clean work here as it will be mostly hidden, but keep in mind that the first centimeter deep needs to be as clean as possible. You'll get why later. Then it's time to take our recess pieces of foam. I will split it into 4, the 2 straight parts and the 2 curvy ones. This will be the longest part we have with the hot wire. You know, the straight pieces are 20 by 6 by 4, and we'll use the wire to get slats of 20 by 1 by 1. Basically, we adjust the device on 1 cm and cut vertically, then horizontally. Now that we have those 48 slats of foam, we'll divide them in 3 groups of 18. First group will be the 1 cm long stones, second will be 1.5, and the last batch will be 2 centimeters. Now that's a lot of tiny bricks. And guess what? We aren't done yet with those. As you can see, they are all too geometrical for medieval architecture. Let me introduce you to the foam grinder, one of the best texture maker of your toolkit. Made of a tin can, a lid, and some nice sharp stones from the backyard. Let's take a handful of bricks, pour it into the foam grinder and shake it firmly for about 20 seconds. Once again, strong warning, wear a mask at this step. The foam dust is as toxic as its smoke. Well, actually, always wear a mask. It's not like if you weren't accustomed to it in 2021. Now you can see the result. The bricks are uneven, smoothened in the corners, and looks like real tiny stone bricks. We're going to use the same process on the curvy foam part, being careful we follow the curve as we hot wire it. This way we'll end up with curved stones. The next steps will be funnier as we begin some assembling. First, with the river ledge. At this step, it's up to you to use PVA glue or hot glue. PVA is safer for the foam but will dry slowly. If you can adjust temperature on your glue gun, choose the coldest you can. We can now take randomly size of brick and make it run along the river edge. We will use the curved ones on the curvy part, of course, but we'll also let a clean space for the bridge, about 2 centimeters more than the width of your bridge road. We will also fill the outline of the sewer exits with some curvy bricks. You can make it stand out a little to give more highlight on this detail. Now regarding the south bank, I decided to give some more shape and have some elevation from the edge to the river. Let's carve it with a sharp blade and then give it a smooth sanding. I told you it was a fun part, right? I'm sorry, but we are now moving to the longest, most boring and depressing part of the texturing. You see that big, flat, immaculate space? We are going to draw cobblestones all over it. Circle by circle, square meter by square meter. Until your wrist burns, until your eyes bleed, until your soul fades away. There will not be 2 identical stones on this town district, and every time you will play on your board, you will remember the hours you spent with a pen making little circles. again and again. You will be so happy to consider having only one part of the map covered with those, with only the road to the bridge with cobblestones. And you will maybe even think, hey, why not just make the road before the bridge as dirt? And also, that monument place we haven't decided yet what to make with? Your best friend when realizing we don't need to texture it. Okay, it took me 3 hours to cover the full district with cobblestones, but I'm glad to tell you the worst is behind us now. Let's only make our tinfoil ball roll over it to give it some more grain, and let's call it an achievement. Now it's time to glue our riverbanks on the main board before moving to the next step. We are now in possession of a huge game board with around half of the ground textured. Let's move to the next phase, which will be the dirt and the waterbed. When working on the dirt texture, my usual friend is the filler plaster. You can use modeling plaster, smoothing plaster, each have their own texture and thickness, and I recommend you check which is the best for you. We are going to use it in different ways during this process. Before covering the remaining parts with it, I want to add some details to the base later, and I think it's a good time to make those. We are making rocks. Of course, you can use real rocks, but if you want to gain some control over it, maybe having rocks that you can actually break can be a good idea. So let's take some tinfoil and crumple it a bit. We want to make some small sockets that can hold up, with different sizes and shapes. We now fill them with some quite liquid plaster and let them dry. When it's done, unwrap them and you have some great spiky, brittle rocks to use however you want in the terrain. My formula for dirt is to use powdered plaster. Add some sand in it and slowly add water until the consistency is good for you. If it's too liquid, it will look more like mud than dirt, and if it's too solid, you will struggle to apply it on the board. The mixing is ready and we use it almost everywhere flat. I'm usually doing it with a big flat brush to create more texture. You can play with the material to create more or less relief and volumes, but as bigger part of the ground will be later covered with grass, I only had a few in this case. We'll proceed the same way for the waterbed, even if in this case we'll add a lot more in top of that. It will also help us seal the waterbed for the epoxy part of the water later in the series. And before the plaster has dried, it's time to add some details into it. We already know that we'll have a tree somewhere on this bank, and I want to circle it with some stones. With the plaster drying, those bricks will be stuck into it as strongly as if it was actual glue. I'm also adding some rocks directly into the drying plaster. Last but not least, I'm sticking 2 lenses from my bits box on the ground where the makeshift bridge will take place. This way I will not have to drill into the plaster later. Now let's give this big work a good night to cure and to our nerves and muscles to recover for the last part tomorrow. What a nice coat of dirt we got here. We are almost done for the ground. We begin with the waterbed. As you can see, it currently looks like our regular dirt, and that's a shame. Let's give it some more life. We take our PVA glue and give the bottom a generous coat. Now let's make it more interesting. I'm taking some sand, pebbles, some leftover bricks, and yeah, let's check also in my bits box. That's just perfect, some skeleton warrior bits. I've cut some parts on this guy to change the position to make a drowned one tied forever to the bottom of the river. I guess life in Marcita Aurora is not always easy when you are in the wrong place at the wrong time. As the river flow will go from left to right, I will glue him as if his body was dragged this way. I don't know yet how much him on the other piece will show when the water will be dropped, but it's the point, I guess. I then generously spray a mix of water and PVA glue on the bottom to secure every piece for the next steps. And the last step for this episode will be the bridges, and we got 2 very different to make. First, I'm cutting a 5mm thick foam slat, 7 cm wide and a bit longer than 6 cm. And I will... oh no. Yes, I'm covering it with the same cobblestone texture that the rest of the set, as it will extend the roadway. Then I'm bending it a little to give it the bridge shape. And then, with glue and wire, I'm sticking it at its place between the two banks. Now, let's take back those curvy bricks. We will try to take those with the most relevant shape, using each time 4 with the same size and glue them to the ground and the bridge. Then to the bridge and the brick aside. If the bricks have been chosen wisely, their weight are making them hold together.
Seodrokait snog,
said Kevin the Beastman. For the other bridge, we need string and wood stirrers, as well as toothpicks or another pair of lenses from the bits box. First, we scratch the wood with a cutter and cut it at the right dimensions. Then, using the gap between our two sticks, we place 2 pieces of string and glue the slats to it, but only one of 2. Then, when it's dry, we turn it back and do the same in the gaps. And to finish the bridge, we take 2 other pieces of string and cross the wood planks while gluing it. Now it's up to you to glue it already to its sticks, or save it for later and add it in the end of the project.
Isse sindrokait snog eile,
said once again Kevin the Beastman. There is actually one last thing to do in this episode, and if you have a better hot wire than mine, you might not need to do it. You see, when cutting the foam board, I made some mistakes and I cannot call those edges great. So with a smooth plaster and a plaster knife, I will smoothen the sides of the base to fill the gaps and make the foam board and the XPS foam as one. Okay, this time we really see our project taking shape. The ground base is finished, apart from the tree and the statue, and if we were just doing a board to play with, it's already as good as it can get. But as our goal is to make a full scenery, our next step is going to be the buildings, and we will move to that point in our next episode. Thanks to everyone who has already decided to follow this series by subscribing to the channel. If it's still not the case, hey, don't worry, your finger is really close to that bell. I hope to see you all for the 3rd episode of The Quest for the City of Marcita Aurora. Until then, take care, good painting to all, and see you all again soon.
And as our hero leaves the town of Hutton in fire and blood, with the knowledge of the ground in his head, he headed north, knowing every step he makes would bring him closer to the sanctified cobblestones of the lost city of Marcita Aurora.